Hello there, this is Michael Feeley, author in the UK. Today this video is just about my new book, Alchemy of the Gods, which is now just being released. And I'm pleased to announce that the foreword is written by international researcher and the founder of CERN, Mary Rodwell. So I'm really pleased to have Mary on board with the book. There's some real revelations in this book. It deals with the elongated skulls, Egypt, religions, Easter Island, Atlantis, all of these mystical things. And I'm just going to read the synopsis to you. In this book, trained police investigator Michael Feeley reveals to you that humans are not from Earth, but from another constellation entirely. He has also uncovered that the pyramids and other mysterious monoliths around the world carry an encrypted message, and that there are higher communications held within the likes of the Nazca lines, crop circles, hieroglyphic language, and the Moai heads of Easter Island. Michael makes astonishing revelations about the mysteries of the elongated skulls of Stonehenge, Egypt, Russia, Peru, and Malta, with a new interpretation of their meaning and formation, plus much more. Just who were these ancient gods, worshipped, idolised, and documented by our ancient ancestors? Are they extraterrestrial beings from other far-off worlds, or are they simply the elder race of man, paying their root races a return visit, giving them the tools for inner transformation? Alchemy of the Gods is a book sent from the stars, and it's receiving some good accolades. Such things as your level of research is astonishing. Thanks to people like you, we're all moving forward. Absolutely mind-blowing. Thank you so much for such amazing puzzle solving. Your knowledge and the way you deliver it is second to none. And Michael is a fantastic encyclopedia of knowledge. Love his work. And there are pages of such accolades. So the book is now available from my website, www.michael-feeley.com. So why not treat yourself an early Christmas present and top yourself up with some real true revelations and some true esoteric knowledge. So thank you very much for your time, and I'll speak again very, very soon.
Paranormal Dimensions is a regular feature on Mondays on the Paranormal UK Radio Network.
This is Sasha Christie, and you're listening to the Paranormal UK Radio Network, the UK's biggest paranormal network. And this is Paranormal Dimensions with David Young.
For me, this is the kind of show that I like doing most, where you basically just have a freewheeling discussion, have a chance to go off on topics. That's what's going to make you an outstanding player in the field. Just keep doing it.
Hello, welcome to the show. Thank you for that intro, Sasha, and thank you for those kind words, Peter Robbins. Okay, now I've got a great guest who's returning to the show. He did a brilliant couple of shows last year. In fact, it was one, and then there was so much coming out that I had to make it into two. And just recently, I'll put both of those shows together as another YouTube video. Well, you call it a video, but it's just audio. But no doubt I'll be putting a link to that as well. But just as an intro, it's Michael Feeley. Now, Michael Feeley is a former UK police officer, an expert witness who uses 17 years of evidence gathering and investigative experience to decipher a secret and complex world of coded messages and languages used by the chosen initiates who hold the key that unlocks the door of knowledge. As well as being a code-breaker of hidden knowledge and encoded secrecy, Michael is also a multiple paranormal and UFO experiencer. His latest book, Alchemy of the Gods, like his other books, continues his exposure of thousands of years of biblical and ecclesiastical secrecy, and it also joins the dots of the advanced knowledge of the ancients, deliberately concealed from us by the priesthoods and secret societies who have successfully managed to hide the truth of ourselves away from us by means of metaphors and allegories. Masked behind a world of secret codes and symbols, Michael has discovered and deciphered a Bible code and other codes that span across the whole of the ancient world that informs the reader as to why such monuments as the likes of the pyramids of Egypt and Stonehenge were built, and what they truly represent, and also reveals the true identity of famous biblical characters, such as Christ, with many more such examples. Michael, in his books, demonstrates such things as how the Great Pyramid is really a representation of the anatomy of the human brain, marking the position of the Indoctrine third eye system, and that pyramid mathematics are actually numerical consciousness frequencies. Sorry, there's a lot of long words to get my tongue around. The books take you into a real-life Da Vinci Code mystery and deep into a world of brotherhood, encoded messages and initiation languages spoken only by the chosen. We welcome you to join Michael as he awakens the serpent fire within you through the coded gifts left for us by the advanced pathfinders of the human race. So, a very big welcome for his return visit to Paranormal Dimensions, Mr. Michael Feeley. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you, Dave, and I deliberately put lots of big words in there.
Thanks for all the tongue twisters.
I knew how difficult it would be, and I just sit here just having a little smile.
I'm gonna try another one now, because I'm gonna read the opening foreword for your new book, and it was a great pleasure to read this foreword for Michael Feeley's book, Alchemy of the Gods. I found the information both comprehensive, multidisciplinary. I got that one all right. It embodies compelling investigative research into the complexity of human origins. It's easier reading it than it is actually saying it. Michael assists the reader to explore new concepts to understand what has been previously interpreted as mysterious, the hidden in terms of human origins and who and what we are. Michael's approach assists the reader to connect the dots as he deciphers new meanings to codes, ancient artifacts and symbology. Now, that was from Mary Rodwell, founder of ACERN. That's ACERN. And just one little addition to that. It says, your level of research is astounding. And that's from Anthony Peake, best-selling author. Now, just by chance, Anthony Peake is my guest next week on the show. So no doubt this will be coming up again. So no doubt you'll mention him to you, Michael, about that. But anyway, should we talk a bit about your new book? It's Alchemy of the Gods. It's I think it came out late last year, didn't it?
Yeah, yes, it did. It was a book that arrived pretty much simultaneously with the Code of Christ, and how that came about is many years ago. I became acquainted with someone on Facebook, and they basically said, if you ever come to Cornwall, let us know, because that's where we live. And lo and behold, last July, we decided we were going to go on holiday to Cornwall. So we dropped this person a line and said, we're coming to Cornwall in a couple of months' time. This is where we're staying. Is that anywhere near you? And they said, that's exactly where we live. So we had a meeting. We got together and had a meeting, had a chat to them. And it turned out that this person was actually a former member of the church of 35 years, and they'd left through despondency and seen through the veil. So it was the perfect marriage, really, the perfect match. So together we sort of wrote the Code of Christ, and then that sort of got the juices flowing again, and it sort of got me into the mood to write again, which had actually sort of disappeared for a little while.
Did it?
So it was the two books that pretty much, so one led to the other one, and they were pretty much finished within weeks of each other. So Alchemy of the Gods really is the most up-to-date one, although now that's concluded, now that's been finished. There's so much more information comes since that there will have to be naturally will have to be another one, because that ball continues to roll and the information continues to come in, which means there has to be, a continuation of that, and that will be in the form of a new book.
Right. I know, they blow me away. I don't know how you keep coming up with all this, or you seem to be discovering new stuff all the time.
Well, it is. I mean, it's just going very, very deep into quantum mechanics and quantum physics now as well, which is sort of complementing, because again, it's still connected to the Christ code and all these things. Even the quantum physics, even the main prophecy and the Roswell crash is all connected to the Christ metaphor. So there's all these different things that are coming in to complement what is already there as a foundation.
Yeah, I know when you were on the show the last time, we covered so many different subjects. I imagine a lot of that is actually sort of have you gone sort of I don't know, deeper into those particular subjects, or is there some sort of spin-off that's gone elsewhere? If you see what I mean.
Well, I do. Well, seemingly it would be a spin-off, but it always seems to return me to the same place at a deeper level than before. So, regardless of what path I tend to take, it always brings me back to the same kind of subject, but it advances my understanding, advances my knowledge of those subjects that I previously had. So it sort of complements what is already there, but it does take it into different avenues. But then I always find a link back to that place.
Right,
and look into even the quantum world. When you look at nucleus, a word that is related to nucleus is crux and seed. Now, crux is cross and seed is the saviour, he who sows the seed. So even when I was looking into quantum mechanics and the subatomic particles, it still took me back to the Christ metaphor. So it always seems to return to the same sort of knowledge base, but then expands upon it.
Now, do you get problems from people? I mean, I know I was lucky enough to meet you a couple of weeks ago in Birmingham, and there's somebody who was in the audience who took the Bible literally, basically, and there was and you tried to explain to him, and he did. Well, he wouldn't have it, would he? That a lot of it was just coded, basically.
It is. I mean, the indoctrine, it runs to the very core of a lot of people, and it's been going on for thousands of years, and people have not advanced in those thousands of years from the original doctrine. So it's a difficult piece of cotton ball to unravel. But all I'm doing is pointing out that the people who wrote these stories have this advanced knowledge that they've hidden within these codes, within these metaphors, and it's not that Christ didn't exist. Christ just didn't exist in the way that you're being taught. Christ existed because we are, each and every one of us is Christ when you understand what Christ is. Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do, is a code for they do not understand the mysteries. Right. And then when you don't understand what Christ really is, it leads to Babel, the Tower of Babel, which is confusion. And that is simply because you don't understand the true meanings of these characters. Because when you do, the whole world changes, the whole teaching changes, and it goes back to the original intended teaching. And it's been hidden by codes to protect it, and also to confuse the uninitiated because they can't interpret the wisdom correctly because they've not been taught to. And that is the general biblical fans, or the fans of the Quran or the Granth or the Talmud or the Torah. It's all the same story, it's all the same characters of a different name.
Yeah, I can gather that. And also, as far as you go with Satan and everything else like that, it's like the complete polar opposites, aren't they?
Well, it is. Again, Satan is the descending serpent, which is a sleeping dragon, which is Kundalini, or Quetzalcoatl, the precious serpent. Wherever you go, it's referenced in different ways. But when you understand sexual alchemy and alchemy and that kind of thing, and how you can use that sexual force, the sacral chakra, it's sort of an upward thrust instead of an outward thrust of the ejaculation of this sacred energy. And with that upward thrust, it raises your sleeping dragon to basically down the highway, which is the spine, Jacob's ladder, to the Christ center, which is your pineal gland, which is your seat of consciousness. However, if that then hits a negative polarity, or it hits some form of negativity or an uncleansed chakra, then it descends. That serpent descends. And of course, when you reference the higher chakras, the higher knowledge as heaven, and the lower chakras, your root chakras and your lower chakras as earth, the kingdom of earth, that descending serpent is the fall of Satan from heaven to earth. It is simply a mechanism of consciousness within you. But I mean, when you look at the likes of Lucifer, the Lux Ferry, the ferryman of light, it's really the phosphorus firing of the blood, which is all to do with blood alchemy. And again, that transmutation, the morning star within, the alchemical firing of the blood. So we have all of this ancient knowledge, and when you look at the word priest, it comes from Magush, which is magi, which is magician, which is alchemy. And then we see all these alchemical symbols on churches that people, you know, the organizer of that event in Birmingham a few weeks ago, last time I was there, he was asking questions about why is there a griffin on a church? It has no place. That's just what it does when you understand what it means. Because the griffin is the amalgamation of sulfur and mercury, which are two of the essences of alchemy.
Right. Yeah.
So when you understand, then it does have a place. It does have meaning.
Yeah. I mean, because we notice that on all churches, don't we? About they've got gargoyles or griffins and things, and we're told that it's supposed to ward off evil, but there's more to it than that.
Of course, the gargoyle, the wings, the gargoyle is basically telling you that man's current position, man's current psyche, is not where he has to be. You know, the wings are the transmutation above that. It's really telling you that where you are now is not where you have to be. That is a place that you can lift yourself, raise yourself above that kind of thing, and that's really the true meaning of these kind of things.
Yeah. I mean, we're actually recording this on the 14th of February. It's Valentine's Day. Now, about a successful marriage, then copy the atom. There was a bit of a paper that you released on Facebook a few days ago, and it says marriage goes beyond the church service. It's a universal order, as we seek to return the energy of purpose. I suppose that's kind of what you were talking about just now, isn't it? About I suppose basically the sex involved in it.
Well, it is, and when you suffer at the hands of lust, which is the spasm of the animal, which is the orgasm, when you start using that in a lustful way, that is really what is deemed as satanic consciousness. So that is why it is said, even though it's misunderstood, why the world is under satanic consciousness is because it's a world of lust, it's a world of passion, it's a world of sex, and that is satanic consciousness. But when you actually use that for compassion, for love, for the amalgamation, the union of your opposites, then that becomes the Christ consciousness. Yeah. And then that is obviously the opposite of the satanic consciousness, and they are both adversaries. So you have the ascending serpent and the descending serpent, and that really is the key to the sexual alchemy that is really going on behind the scriptures. Yeah,
I suppose that's where we get tales of Sodom and Gomorrah and things like that, isn't it, in the Bible?
Well, Sodom and Gomorrah, basically the lower chakras. Now, when this fire, this serpent of fire ascends, then it destroys the lower chakras on its ascent. Now, that is the symbolic of Sodom and Gomorrah. When you look at alchemy and you see that the three main components of alchemy are your mercury, your sulfur, and your salt. Now, each one of those will contain the others. So therefore, you have three and three, which is 9. Esoteric man, the completion, the 9 pyramids of Egypt. And that is, again, Lot's wife turned into salt. You know, the only part left after this alchemical transmutation is the salt of the body. And that really is Lot's wife turned into salt. So it's talking about alchemical transfusion and transmutation to a higher type of human.
Right, yeah. I was actually reading further down about, and I was talking about the Masonic black and white checkered flooring that interests me, also in a lot of the churches, and also on the police uniforms and stuff like that. Now, it's obviously Masonic connections with all of that, isn't there?
Well, it is, but it's been adopted by the Masons, but it obviously refers to duality. Now, the whole of our reality, the whole of our existence, whether it's atomic, whether it's subatomic, whether it's masculine and feminine, whether it's a North Pole or a South Pole, everything is a duality, which is obviously represented by the black and white. But looking at the black and white much deeper, it is really the ignorance, which is the black. It is the ignorance of your own divine spark, which is the white. So the black and white is really that dualistic creation which the universe created in equal amounts, which is a parity of 50-50. But everything is a dualistic reality, even though duality is merely an effect of a cause, and that cause is a third party. So when you look at the likes of the electron and the proton, that is a positive and a negative, but the thing that allows them to exist and coexist is the neutron, which is oneness. And it's this triune, this trinity, but we only see the effect of the cause. But the whole fabric of universal creation is this dualistic reality, and that goes again into the subatomic world, and even smaller than the subatomic world. And it is the amalgamation of these subatomic particles like the quarks and the leptons, which are bound together by the Higgs boson, which is a creation from the Higgs field, which is what creates matter and what creates substance. But even that is a marriage. These two opposites are engaged in a marriage, a union. And when a man and woman or whoever gets married, it is really a reflection of that atomic union. And it really goes to a deeper essence than what we've been told. So yes, it does represent the black and white of duality, which is classed as positive and negative, but only in the sense that it's opposite charge. So one is not bad and one is not good. It is sort of equal creation, but it's just opposite charge, and it's a reflection of your ignorance of your own divine spark.
Right. Yeah. Further on from that, the X chromosomes are the famous Planet X. It reads here, and I suppose when you put together all the rest of it, it does actually kind of make sense with what you're talking about.
Well, when you put the whole component parts, now if you just look at one individual civilization and you just study that one individual civilization, and you can dispute the message, but what I found is I've looked at every civilization of the world and beyond that we know of, and every one is really telling you the same thing. Now, when you see the same numbers and the same codes and the same metaphors and the same symbols, the same language being used, you can start to say that actually all these civilizations who we were told were individuals doing individual projects are actually all connected, and that all of these Stonehenge and the pyramids of Giza and the Mayans and Teotihuacan and Quetzalcoatl and the heads of Easter Island and the Nazca lines and crop circles and the Sidonian city on Mars, all of these things were actually part of a giant matrix, and they were not individual projects. They were all working together for a common aim, a common goal. And that common goal is the transmutation of genetics. Now, when you start looking into genetics and the science of genetics and how our ancestral DNA goes from our generation to generation to generation of our own family, we then start looking at the real symbology of the red carpet of the likes of the Oscar ceremony, which is really telling you of this genetic bloodline. Now, this genetic bloodline is important, and this is why members of Egyptian royalty used to intermarry, and this is why that custom continues today in the likes of the British royal family, who do not marry commoners, as the mainstream tell us. They intermarry their own relatives because they understand that this sacred knowledge gets taken from generation to generation of their family through their blood, and that is why they have all of these sort of incestual marriage, for want of a better phrase. So when you start looking at the Anunnaki in partnership with dozens of other ancient cultures, you start to see that this actually it has a different interpretation, and my interpretation of that is it is telling you how to transmute to a higher type of human through genetics. Now, when you start analysing the individual characters of the Anunnaki, and you start looking at Anunnaki really means life from the stars, life from the heavens, it's really talking about ourself, because our DNA was coded elsewhere, not on Earth. Our physical body was created in Orion, the constellation of Orion, the Orion Nebula. Now, when stars die in the Orion Nebula, that is what provides the carbon and the oxygen that creates physical life on Earth, or enables physical life on Earth. So if our DNA is encoded elsewhere, not from Earth, and our physical body is not from Earth, then from heaven to earth came. That is ourself. We are from somewhere else. So when you look at the chief god of the Anunnaki, Anu, in Sanskrit, which is the earliest language of Earth, or one of the earliest languages of Earth, Anu means atom. Now, when you look at how science tells us that Crick and Watson discovered the double helix of DNA in 1953, the Sumerian scrolls disprove that, because Enki and Enlil, the Shetty, the Snake brothers, are the positive and negative twist of the double helix of DNA. It is the two serpents. Now, when you start looking at Alalu, who is supposedly the face on Mars, but Alalu was the supervisor of the mining expedition for gold, which was the reason that we're told the Anunnaki came to Earth to mine for gold to replenish the dwindling atmosphere of their planet. Now, when you look at Alalu, Alalu means wave genetics, which basically genetics begins as a waveform and then incorporates matter to become DNA, which is how the planets are formed. It's a miniature version of the planets. So all of the individual characters, Adamu, Tiamat. Adamu means earth. Tiamat is the primordial forces of creation. It is Eridu, which is Eden, Adam and Eve. Adam is earth, Eve is life on earth. How do we experience life on earth? Through the physical body that's created in Orion. So when you start looking at all these things and you start disproving certain bits and certain aspects of the story, then it brings into question the whole story. And many people have seen the famous tablet where they see a kind of hexagram in the middle and they see 11 orbs around that main hexagram, and they're convinced that it depicts the solar system. It doesn't. It depicts atoms, the atomic nucleus, the hexagram 11. Now, the hexagram 11 comes from the words Quin and Kun, which is heaven and earth. Now, within each nucleus, there is a hexagram, a nuclear hexagram, and that is really what's being depicted. It's talking about genetics. Even the famous handbags that are all around the world, what looks like a handbag, the arch. Yeah. The arch is really the pi radian, the 180 degrees, the 1 pi radian. Now, in sort of geometry, the pi radian, the archway, is a higher consciousness, and the main bag, the square, represents the physical realm. So the physical realm as a bridge, an archway, a way to get out. And these pictures are often accompanied by the likes of scorpions and vultures. A scorpion is the guardian of sacred portals, and the vulture is a transmuter from the physical. Now, a vulture obviously eats flesh. Now, that is telling you of a transmutation from the physical to a higher self. So when you put all these things together, Planet X is your X chromosome that carries your ancestral knowledge. And Nibiru basically means the crossing point. It's talking about the cross section of DNA that distinguishes races, distinguishes appearance between races. It's the DNA crossover. It's the X chromosome. It is the Planet X. So when you start looking at it into a more genetic, higher type of human context, it gives you a completely different interpretation, which then fits in. And it's not me trying to make it fit in, it's following where the evidence leads. Now, when you follow where the evidence leads, it is all telling you the same story. Now, the book of Genesis is really the book of genetics. And it's telling you all of these different things that are formulating basically an ancient code, which is the title of a previous book. Why is it an ancient code? Because the whole of the ancients were telling us the same message, but they've encoded it in different ways.
I was just reading this bit here, but RNA instructs DNA, and DNA carries this genetic information through our double helix system, which is a 3 billion letter code.
That is correct. And then in addition to that, we have junk DNA, which is not junk. It controls gene expression. Gene expression is basically how genetics works. It's the instruction manual. And when we look at how earthly scientists, Japanese scientists in 2007 implanted a message into the bacteria of human DNA, and that message was E = mc squared in the year 1905. That went from generation to generation to generation. It passed through a genetic line, Now, if Earth scientists can put messages into DNA, then there are even more advanced scientists that can program DNA elsewhere, which is then seeded through panspermia, has then come to Earth and has then come to other star systems. Even in a couple of years ago, scientists have implanted messages into subatomic particles, into neutrons, into neutrinos, and they've hidden all these messages in genetics, which are basically taking our genetic line. So we are really, even our languages, even the language that we're speaking now, the languages that we speak on Earth, the different languages that we speak on Earth are a reflection of genetics. It's a genetic language. And we all speak different languages because we all have different genetics. And we all have different genetic crossovers, which gives us, why are some people Chinese, some people are Nordic, why some people are German, and look different? Because they have different crossover of genes, of genetics. Their gene expression is different. But that is why their language is different, because it's an inherent genetic language.
Yeah, right. So really, all those people that are looking for Planet X and Nibiru out in space are looking in the wrong place, basically.
Yes, because it's within, as are everything, those who are looking for the Garden of Eden by the 4 rivers. Well, the 4 rivers are the fluid systems of the body. The Garden of Eden is the human body. Now, when I mentioned earlier about the sacral chakra thrusting this cerebrospinal fluid up to the brain, which takes 12 hours to get there and back, this upward thrust of this cerebrospinal fluid and this energy. Now, the cerebrospinal fluid is salt-based, it's saline. Therefore, that is our salvation. When it thrusts up to the Christ center, it creates gamma rays. Now, gamma rays usually oscillate and vibrate at 40 hertz. That is a hertage of superconsciousness. Now, number 40 is used so many times in the Bible. It rained for 40 days and 40 nights. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness. Jesus spent 40 nights in the wilderness or whatever. It's because it's a sacred number of superconsciousness. And, all of these things, why did Christ die on the cross age 33? Not that Christ lived as a physical person. It's the number 33 that is pinnacle. And as I was saying on the talk the other week, not many people know that the Christ metaphor, the Roswell crash in New Mexico, and the Mayan 2012 prophecy are all connected by the number 33, the number of transition and wisdom. And, whatever happened at Roswell, wherever it was a deliberately chosen location. Because of, when you look at it, it actually sits 33 degrees north latitude at a distance of 2,012 nautical miles from the equator. Now, when you do the latitude of the Roswell impact site, 33 degrees north, and you multiply that by the mathematical constant of pi, it gives you 104 degrees, which is the longitude of the impact site. Now, when you look at the 33rd parallel, again the number 33, you will see that from 0 to 33 in either direction is 2,012 nautical miles. That is the 2012 Mayan prophecy. And in addition to that, this prophecy meant to have ended, or something was meant to have happened on the 21st of December. Well, that's 2112. 21 plus 12 is 33. It's a higher level of human consciousness. That is what they're really telling us. And when you start incorporating many other things as well, the 32 archways and the obelisk of the Vatican, which is 33, when you start looking at Mount Hermon, which is the Paramount Pictures movie film mountain, when you start looking at that, that's on the intersection of 33 degrees longitude and 33 degrees latitude. When you start looking at the numerical value of the word New Mexico, which is 111 times the amount of numbers that are in 111, which is 3. 111 times 3 is 333. We have all of these things. The solar year, when you add all the numbers of the solar year, it equals 33. When you look at Newton's scale, water boils at 33. It's frozen at 32, boils at 33. When you look at the Schumann resonance, 7.83 hertz, it has a 33-32 ratio. And the human body resonates exactly 33 octaves above Earth's fundamental vibration. The 33rd mention of Jacob in the Bible mentions Jacob's ladder, which is the human spine, which has 33 vertebrae. The 33rd vertebrae is known as Atlas. Now, that leads us on to Atlantis, which means the island of Atlas. It's really talking about your consciousness centre. The lost city of Atlantis is the pineal gland.
Mm.
And as Plato said, it's the island that rules 7. Because the pineal gland is situated in between the 2 hemispheres of the brain, surrounded by the cerebrospinal fluid, and it is the master gland of the 7 chakras. Therefore, it is the island that rules 7. It is your seat of consciousness, is the lost city of Atlantis. When you start putting even now, half of the ancient world has just been connected by one number in that last couple of minutes. And when you start looking at how these numbers are just repeated and repeated and repeated in different ways all over the world and beyond, then you start to see a pattern emerging.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm reading some of these things in front of me. It says like the Queen Mother's time of death was at 3:15, and that is both hands pointed at 3 or 33.
Yeah.
Like you said about the Iraq, just with New Mexico, the Roswell crash. Iraq and Saddam Hussein's palace is on the 33rd parallel.
Yeah.
It's actually mind blowing.
JFK was assassinated on the 22nd of November.
Yeah.
On the 33rd parallel, 22nd of November, 22 plus 11 is 33. These things are no coincidence.
And I mentioned to you about the Beatles, didn't I? Number 9. I mean, on the end of one of their records, it said number 9, number 9, number 9. I always wondered what that meant. And also, you got the 33 RPM on LPs. There must be some sort of a connection to that as well.
Well, there is. Again, the number 9 is esoteric man, is completion. Now, again, when you look at the Beatles, and when you listen to some of their lyrics, for argument's sake, when I'm 64. Now, a lot of people read the lyrics when I'm 64. He's talking about becoming old or old age. No, he's not. And when you start seeing some of the hand gestures that members of the Beatles are responsible for, the Masonic compass and different things. When you look at the word awakened, the gematria of the word awakened is 64. So when I'm 64, in other words, when I'm awakened, now the 64 in Masonic terms is the perfect cube. It is the philosopher's stone. It is the wisdom stone. Now, when you look at the word Beatles, spelt Beatles, lo and behold, its geometric value is 64. When I'm 64, when I'm enlightened, and there's all of these kind of codes in music, in films, in the whole of society.
Yeah. So are you actually saying that the Beatles were a preconceived idea, or did they do it accidentally, not really knowing what they were doing? Because I mean, as far as we know, they were just friends that got together, started playing music, and we all know the rest of the history.
We did. The thing is, I did a complete feature on this, a complete article on this kind of thing, and somebody made a comment saying, I really don't think they were that intelligent. And I said, well, they don't need to be, because they're vessels for someone else. And when you look at the people behind these industries, they have an advanced knowledge, and they're putting this advanced knowledge and this encrypted knowledge through the likes of the Beatles. Are you telling me the likes of Britney Spears has this kind of advanced knowledge? Of course not. But she's a vessel. She's being used. Lady Gaga, does she have this kind of knowledge? Well, no. But she doesn't have to, because she's being used. And all of these people are useful innocents on many occasions, and a lot of them, because they're within those kind of circles, they obviously understand that there's more going on, but they are really conveyors of this hidden secret knowledge. So they don't necessarily have to know it or understand it, because they are the vessel in which it is delivered to the adoring fanatics, their fans, who are basically subliminally not getting it, not seeing it.
So when you see something like When I'm 64, a song written by Paul McCartney, was he suggested to write a song called When I'm 64, or did it just come up naturally for himself? Well, that's what I'm kind of getting at.
Well, I think that a lot of these lyrics are really contain hidden meanings, and the only person who really knows what they truly meant, or what they certainly intended to mean, is the person who wrote the song. But it's strange how through these different artists all over the world, from different generations, from different decades, all seem to have a hidden code within their hand gestures, within their symbols, within their album covers, within their lyrics. It's funny how, again, when I speak about the ancient world not being individual projects, it's funny how all these pop cultures and these people from different decades are all transmuting or conveying the same message. So that leads you to think that the foundation, the origin, is the same people that are using these as a medium. You know, how many people, the young people, are impressionable? How many people follow their every move and worship them as gods? Have pictures of them. You know, they are the perfect tool to introduce this sacred knowledge in people's face.
Well, we've all
and have
been
a laugh
there,
at
haven't we?
them.
So we've all been there.
Of course we have. You know, I know you tell me you had lots of wham pictures on your wall,
well, not
but
that,
that, you know,
But, yeah, do you think that Brian Epstein might have been actually a Mason of some kind, who when he got hold of the Beatles?
They all mix in the same circles, so they're either a member of these clubs or they're very closely connected to them. Because again, when you look at the encoded messages within that are being thrust into the public arena, that you can see that there is a steering force, and that steering force is the same kind of steering force that put all these codes into the Bible, into the Quran, into all of these monuments of the world. There is a steering force that is subjecting the public to this kind of information, and that steering force, when you look at it in legal terms, it's known as a modus operandi, a method, and you can see that method is quite clear throughout this reality.
Right. Do you think it even goes back a lot to even Elvis Presley, and even beyond that to Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin and people like that?
Yeah, of course. They were all friends of friends in these societies, and when you look at, you know, like some of the pictures that come from Bohemian Grove, and you see lots and lots of presidents of the United States sitting around tables together, and it's all members of boys clubs and fraternities. You know, and there's a reason for that, because they're as Stalin said, you know, sorry, now Roosevelt, I do apologise, as President Roosevelt said, presidents are not elected, they're selected.
Yeah, I think that's quite obvious quite a lot of the time. Yeah, it doesn't matter if they're Democrat or whatever. Yeah. I don't know where to go now. Like when you're talking about Jesus and the Last Supper and explaining about the metaphor with 13 people, there's something to do with that, isn't there, for what you were talking about earlier?
Yeah, again, when you look at numerology and you look at the word Christ, now the word Christ equals 77. So obviously you have the likes of the G7 summit. Well, what is the G7 summit? G is the seventh letter, and the G7 is 7 and 7. So again, that's no coincidence. Now, when you do a simple mathematical formula of 7 times 7, it equals 49. The significance of that is on the 49th day of its existence, the fetus drinks DMT from the pineal gland, which trickles down to the mouth. Now, DMT is a liquid. Supper comes from the word soup, and soup means to consume a liquid. So in other words, the Last Supper, the last soup, is the consumption of the liquid of DMT. Now, the geometric composition of DMT is known as the indole ring, which is basically the hexagram and the pentagram. So therefore you have the mathematical formula of 6 over 5. 6 over 5 gives you the marriage of Osiris and Isis. It gives you the Polaris diagram, which are the hand positions of the Mona Lisa. It gives you Adam and Eve. It gives you the geometry of nitrogen and oxygen in DNA. It gives you all of these kind of things that it gives you musically the squaring of the circle, which is basically the physical and the metaphysical. When you go to the Great Pyramid of Egypt, and you see the double chevron, that it comes from Shibua, which means where the two worlds meet. It's all to do with this amalgamation of the two worlds and the squaring of opposites. The Pyramid of Deshua is the pentagram and the hexagram, which represents the number 6 and the number 5. Of course, 6 and 5 together is the number 11. The arcanium 11, which is all to do with the marriage of opposites, the union of opposites. It is all telling you the same kind of thing. So the Last Supper is really a metaphor for the drinking of this DMT. Then when you start looking at how consciousness and whatever conveys into this reality, into this world, you can then start going into Metatron's cube, which is really the 12 spheres around the 13th. And that is the 12 and the Christ, the 13. There's so many different things. You know, when you look at the Last Supper painting, you see the hands and the loaves of bread are actually musical notes. They are a 40-second requiem. Now, again, there's that number 40 again, which is that super consciousness. It's actually musical notes from right to left is a musical requiem of 40 seconds. So there's so much symbology and so much encrypted and coded information that the whole world is full of this encoded knowledge that is being protected from the likes of the uninitiated, who are confused or are being confused by a superficial story.
Yeah.
And that is why it's called the greatest story ever told. That is telling you what it is.
So really, I mean, what you're saying is there wasn't such a person as Christ as such, but it's just basically a kind of a fairy story that's been handed down and we've been controlled by it.
There wasn't an individual as Christ as such, because every one of us is the Christ. Every one of us, Christ comes from Christos. Christos in esoteric circles means the fire. It is really the fire within, which is the alchemy, the stoking of the alchemical fire, your inner serpent, which leads your awakening up to the Christ center through the highway that is Jacob's ladder, the spine. Now, when you start looking at the Moses story and you see the Israelites, they were in captivity in Egypt. Now, in the Kabbalah, Egypt represents the lower chakras, the clip-off, which is the abyss, the lower dimensions. So when we follow Moses, our thelema, our spiritual will, when we follow this spiritual will, it takes us from captivity, the lower chakras, through to the Godhead, through the path of least resistance. That path of least resistance in Gnosticism is known as the open sea. That is the parting of the Red Sea of the Moses story. That is how we get from the lower realms to the Promised Land. The Promised Land is Christ consciousness, not Israel. And that is how we achieve basically the Promised Land, which is Christ consciousness. So that the character Christ is really a metaphor for the internal fire that awakens the sleeping dragon within. So every one of us is Christ. When you look at Mary Magdalene, it is really the Holy Grail, the Yoni, the Vesica Piscis, which equals 153. 1 plus 5 plus 3 equals 9. When Christ and the disciples caught fish after his resurrection, they caught exactly 153 fish. When you go to the Great Pyramid of Egypt, the entrance is on the 17th course level. Add the numbers 1 to 17. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 up to 17 is equals 153. When you go inside the Grand Gallery of the Great Pyramid, it's 153 feet long. It has 153 steps. It is the 153 which is sacred knowledge that also gives the equation of the number 9, which is esoteric completed man. These things are not by coincidence. They are all sacred encrypted codes.
It really blows me away. Do you get much criticism? When you go around doing your talks and things, I mean, I did get a little sample of it a couple of weeks ago. Do you get a lot of criticism when you go and do your talks? About people that are so adamant about the Bible being true. I just wonder if it does cause you problems at all on your talks.
No, but I mean, you're always going to get the odd heckler. Because, the subjects that I go into, when you go into a UFO community and you talk about Zachariah Sitchin having mistranslated the Anunnaki story, when I go into other locations, now bear in mind that there's billions of people around the world that are indoctrined to one of the main religions. So it stands to reason that you're going to come across them quite regularly.
Yeah.
So it doesn't cause me a problem. I mean, I've stood in the dock in front of top barristers and judges, and I've been grilled and I've been grilled for several days in the dock. Now, somebody in the audience arguing with me that Jesus Christ existed doesn't mean that much when I've been grilled by the top legal minds in this country.
True, yeah.
So it doesn't affect me. What I say to them is open your mind and listen and think.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's because they're just so I agree with you entirely. They're just so indoctrinated, and I mean, do you get problems? What about with priests and things? I know you do tours of cathedrals and churches and stuff like that. Do they, knowing what you're going to be doing, going in and basically criticising what or telling everyone what all the things mean, do they ever come back at you?
Well, I'm quite open. When I say to them, this is what I want to do, and this is what I talk about. What I talk about are the things that religion don't talk about. How when you look at some of the symbols in the church, when you look at the pictorials on the stained glass window, when you look at the sacred geometry of the church, I talk about what you don't. And it's not just sacred geometry to look pretty; it's sacred geometry that enhances consciousness. It is the vibration of sanctity that is coming from this sacred geometry. So what I'm not sort of criticising them. I'm not putting them down. I'm not saying that they're wrong and I'm right. What I'm saying is there's a different message to what is being taught. Now within that message, within that different message that's not being taught, there is a fantastic teaching going on, and what that teaching is telling you is about your sacred self. And when there is such a system that people are looking at outside icons to save them, they are taking themselves out of the kingdom of God. The kingdom of God is their own body, their own vessel. That is why the Bible says the kingdom of God is within you. What do you think that means? It's telling you, your highway to your seat of consciousness, your Christ temple, Golgotha, the place of skulls, is Jacob's ladder, the spine, which is the chakras, which is the highway that takes the kundalini, the sleeping serpent, to your Christ consciousness. All this happens in the temple, which is the head. Temple means the house of God, which is inside the mind. It is your mind, that is your connection to the higher place. And I'm quite sort of open with them. It's an esoteric tour. This is what I will be talking about. I won't disturb anything else that's going on, and I won't interfere with anything else that's going on. But my group will hear this. So you're always going to come across opposition. You're always going to come across people that refuse to speak to you because of what you're saying. But what I am saying is, it's a message of the fact that humans are supernatural beings. We do not need to worship anything outside of ourselves. Everything that we can possibly need is inside us.
Right. Do you think that even the priests themselves don't know what half the signs and secret things that are in churches are about even?
They don't, and of course the heads of religion do. The Pope and the Black Pope and the hierarchy of the Vatican Church know. Of course they do, because even the word Vatican, Vatica, Tika is the third eye. The pyramid of Tikal, the main pyramid of Tikal, the third eye, consciousness. They understand, and when they come out with things like, it has served us well, this myth of Christ, Jesus is metaphorical, not literal. Well, they're telling you. And that quote, Jesus is metaphorical, not literal, was a quote from the current Pope. The previous one was a quote from Pope Leo X. It has served as well as myth of Christ. They're telling you.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, there must be vast secrets tucked away in the Vatican. I bet we'd all like to go in there.
Well, you certainly would, because there's so much stuff been hidden. The law of attraction, which is the law of thermodynamics, and all of this has been taken out of the Bible, so people will never connect to this higher vibration, this higher place.
Yeah. I was even reading a bit here about the whole world's religions are covered for this knowledge, and so are ancient monoliths and monuments, even mythical characters like King Arthur and Merlin. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, whether it's a pyramid, whether it's a stone circle, whether it's a gigantic head in Easter Island, what do the heads of Easter Island represent?
Why can you only see the head? Because that is the Herma. The Herma is a Greek word for the divine mind. You can only see the head of Easter Island because it represents the divine mind. It's telling you to concentrate on your divine mind. That is your higher dimensional connection, the mind, the fort, the Teote of Egypt. And why do they all face east? Because in cardinal points, east is the direction of enlightenment, illumination. That is why the Sphinx of Egypt faces east. That is why Egyptian mummies faced east, because it's telling you about this wisdom, this enlightenment. So wherever you go in the world, it is all the same message, and that can be a pyramid, a tetrahedron, it can be a stone circle, it can be a gigantic head, it can be the pyramids of different cultures, it can be the serpent mound in America and places. It doesn't matter what it is. It can be Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl simply means precious serpent. Now, its other name, Kulkakan, means the serpent at the base of the spine. And that is only one thing. That is your Kundalini serpent fire that awakens your Christ consciousness. It's all about the individual potential through genetics, through transmutation, which again brings in the elongated skulls of Egypt, Peru, Malta, Stonehenge, Russia. It's all part of the same transmutation through sound into a higher type of human. And that is really what they were all doing.
Yeah. Because that's a big part of what your new book's all about, isn't it? About the skulls, or just part of it.
Well, it's sort of covered in one of the chapters. I mean, the ancient, the alchemy of the gods covers a lot of seemingly different subjects, but it's all one subject really. It goes a little bit into how within the longitude and latitude of these famous monuments, they are encoding their precise position on Earth. They're also encoding the position of other monuments of Earth and beyond Earth. It goes into how really archaeology won't find it because it's not, these codes are not in the ground. They're written in stone, literally. And it goes into, the likes of Stonehenge, how it has 60 outer stones that were situated in a 360 degree circle. Now, when you do 360 times 60, it equals 21,600. Which is 1 minute of arc, so it's basically a navigation thing. Originally, there were 15 inner stones with a rational arrangement. That irrational arrangement was telling us that it's a square root. So, because there were 15 inner stones originally, we have the square root of 15. Now, the square root of 15 equals something like 52,562,000, so on and so on, which gives you the West Giza longitude of Stonehenge. So it's actually marking its precise location. When you get the two of the smaller pyramids of the Giza Plateau, and because there's 3 of them, they represent 3 pi, and they run on a certain grid vector. Now, when you times 3 pi with the grid vector that they rest on, it gives you the longitude of Stonehenge. So when we look at how the pyramid is the geometric centre of the world, when you look at the 4 paws of the Sphinx that represent 4 pi, and how the Sphinx is read on a grid vector of 5,400. Now 5,400 times 4 pi equals the radius of Stonehenge. When you look at the 3D form of the Great Pyramid, it equals 2 pi. It basically is encoded as 41 degrees 11 minutes and 10.03 seconds. Now that gives you the location of the face on Mars. It doesn't start, it just goes on and on and on. All of these mathematical references between the monuments of Earth, the monuments of Mars, and the monuments of other places.
Wow. There's going to be an exam after this for everyone out there. What you were talking about earlier about foods having different vibrations, and like fresh foods at 20 to 27 hertz exactly. Could you explain a bit more about that? Because I don't quite understand what you mean. Does this prove that some foods for you are better than others? Is that what it's?
It is, but basically, the universe is a vibration. The very word universe means one verse. Now, a verse is a metrical rhythm. So in a metrical rhythm, we have mathematics and sound. Now, because the universe is vibrational and is basically a frequency, so is the human body, so is our atoms, nothing is ever still. Everything has a vibration. Even at sub-zero temperatures, it still has a vibration. Now, what that means is that there is a multi-pronged attack on the vibrational state of humanity. Now, that is through water, that is through food, that is through the air, through chemtrails, through different things, through negativity, through bad news, through the way music is now tuned. And what I meant by the food is when you eat food that is naturally grown by the rays of the sun, it has a high vibration. Now, when you put that high vibration in the form of food, condensed light, into your vibratory body, it is a compatible high frequency. When you put the likes of GMOs, they have zero vibration. In other words, it is dead. Right. Now, when you're putting that zero vibration, dead vibration into your body, over time, it creates degenerative diseases. And we're basically killing ourselves with food that have zero vibration.
Oh. And do you think that's an intentional thing by the powers that be to have these foods around to keep the populations down?
Absolutely. Everything is geared to keep people at a low vibration, and people, quite rightly, it was branded as a conspiracy theorist when you look at chemtrails. But what chemtrails really are, they are clusters of positive ions. Now, don't be fooled by the word positive in this, because when ions cluster together, those positive ions are actually a negative. And they create lethargy, they create disease, they create a bad environment for this organic body to actually exist in. So it's a multi-pronged attack to keep your vibration low, because when your vibration is low, you are constantly in a fight and flight situation. It's full of stress. It's full of survival. At that level, your body can never raise to the higher frequencies, because once you do, you're untouchable. They've lost you. So absolutely too right. It is all deliberate.
Yeah. What's your opinion about the coronavirus that's going on around? Do you think that was another preconceived idea?
My opinions of many viruses that are suddenly inflicted upon us, they are created in a lab somewhere.
Yeah, you're not the only one that thinks that way. I'm pretty sure.
I do. I do believe that they are created and they are released upon us. And I really do. I do genuinely believe that. I mean, I don't have initial science reports of proof or evidence of that, but my belief is that these things are created in a lab and they're basically released.
Yeah.
And that's my opinion.
Well, it does seem strange that it came out of China, because all the protests and things that have been in Hong Kong and China at the moment, it's kind of taken everyone off the streets, hasn't it?
Well, then you start to look at it with a different set of eyes when you start to look at things in that way. I do think these things are created, and I do think when you sort of trace the patents and things like that, you see that things are patented well before they're released, and I do think they are perpetrated upon us.
I mean, these things do seem to come and then sort of just whittle away, just disappear. I know there's still cases of AIDS and SARS and everything else like that, but they do seem to just disappear after a while, and you don't hear anything more about them.
Well, that's because the media don't. But because the media don't report it, then it goes out of people's consciousness. Because basically, as it has been said, at some point, the evolution of man will be that they will only parrot fashion the news that they've heard the previous evening, and we're now at that place. So because the media don't cover it all the time, people forget about it.
Yeah.
But there are still things going on.
Yeah. Now you're heading to America in a few days, I understand. You're headed to San Francisco for quite a big talk. So what talk will you be? Will you be talking about your newest book, or sort of the whole thing in general, or all of your books in general? And how long have you got? Do you think?
Well, I've been given hour and 15 minutes. I speak I fly out next Wednesday, the 19th. I speak. The conference goes from Thursday the 20th to Sunday the 23rd. I speak. I'm last but one speaker on the Sunday, which is the last day of the conference. So I have a few days sort of get my bearings and mingle and do different things before I speak there. What I like to do with my talks, I've been specifically asked to detail a lot of my own personal experiences, which I've incorporated into this talk. But I also like to bring a lot of other things in that again are seemingly different subjects, but they're not. So everything that I talk about is connected.
Sure.
And the audience will be taken all over the world. You know, we'll zip from Atlantis, we'll go to the pyramids, we'll go to Stonehenge, we'll go to Sardinian City, we'll go to the subatomic world, we'll go to the creation of the universe, the Big Bang, and how, you know, everything was created from that particular point and then spread out into duality and into polarity and things. So there will be umpteen subjects that are really connected, all in one place, all in one slideshow, which is how I like to do things.
Yeah.
So I'm giving them what the organisers want, but I'm also putting the things that I want in there as well, just to bring it in, or bring it all together.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure there'll be many following on from that. And you've got an awful lot of stuff to put in what, hour and 15 minutes, you say?
It's an hour and 15 minutes, which is difficult because it's what do I put in and what do I take out. And it really does grieve me to have to miss things out because that's, you know, each and every part is a pinnacle part, but you know, I just have to stick to the rules, and I'll speak for hour and 15 minutes and get as much as I can in that time.
Well, I imagine you'll have quite a few private conversations with people anyway, because there'll be a hell of a lot of questions being asked, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, I suppose the only saving grace on that, and I was speaking to somebody who's talking there as well. I was speaking to them earlier on today, and they're flying in from Canada, which is only 2 hours away, but my flight's 11.5 hours. But they are the first speaker of the whole event on the Thursday. So what they're saying is that, you know, a lot of people want to speak to you and want to take you into separate rooms and talk to you. The thing with my talk is, because it's last but one on the last day, no one will necessarily know who I am, so they won't want to talk to me, and the conference probably ends an hour after my talk, hour and a half after my talk. So it depends on how many people I can speak to in that time. So it can go either way. You know, that people have either done their research on who's speaking, or they haven't, and I'll be left alone until the last day.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that some of them do. Are you taking some of your books with you? I suppose it's difficult to take too many over, isn't it?
Well, what I've done, I've had them shipped out by FedEx to the hotel where I'm staying. Yeah. Where I'm staying, so I haven't got to pay excess baggage when I get to the airport and things like that. So yeah, they've already been dispatched, so they should be waiting for me when I arrive. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Someone you must speak to while you're there is a friend of mine, Solaris Blue Raven. Now,
yes, she's one of the speakers.
I don't know if you've spoken to her before, but she's absolutely amazing.
I've never spoken to her, but I've heard of her, and of course she's one of the speakers. I can't remember what day she's speaking on, but she's certainly there.
I'm hoping you'll run into her because she's coming back on this show again shortly. She's been on before, but she's absolutely mind blowing, much like yourself, and you'll have a fascinating conversation.
Well, good. Well, if I bump into her, I'll speak to her. I'll send you regards to her, and that'll be an icebreaker.
Well, I'll send her a message to me in order to make sure that you do sort of that she goes and says hello to you. But yeah, she's great. But anyway, let's go back to this cathedral tour that we mentioned earlier, or you mentioned earlier. It's something new that you're planning, or kind of new, but a new enhancement to what you've done before, basically, because you've gone around churches and things, haven't you?
It is what I've done previously. I did a tour of the inner circles of Stonehenge, and I took a group to the inner circles of Stonehenge to basically tell them what the stones really represent and what they're there for. And as part of that, we actually made the stones sing through sound and through vibration, and that was just an amazing experience. So what I decided to do is to do. In the future, I have plans to go to the likes of the pyramids of Egypt and Easter Island and different places around the world in the future. But what I'm doing at the moment is I'm setting up I've contacted several cathedrals, and what I've done is I've sort of covered all geometric angles of the country. So I've approached, some of them in Manchester, in London, in the Midlands, up north and places. So
how about Suffolk?
It should. Well, it should, I'm working on that, but it's basically I'm trying to make it accessible wherever people are in on the mainland, really. So the next one I've arranged will be in Birmingham in April, and then there will be others that come from that as well in different places. And what I aim to do is basically point out this hidden language. And, again, I've been perfectly honest with them and said, this is me, this is what I'm going to be talking about. It's going to be my group. I will be the guide for them. Some have turned around and said no, and others have welcomed it.
Some have actually said no, have they?
Yes. Some of them have said no on the basis that you are only allowed to do tours with their guides. So they weren't going to allow someone from the outside to do a tour.
So they're the ones that are protecting the information.
Well, that is part of it. So the ones that have said yes, obviously, are a go ahead, and the ones that have said no are not. And I'll respect their rejection and go somewhere else.
Yeah, I'm sure that there will be. I intend to join you on one or two of those, and you can count on that, Michael. My wife wants to come as well, so you'll have both of us.
Well, no, good. The thing is, I think it's better when you're actually there and you're pointing things out and saying, this is what this means. This is the whole history, really, of religion, and how is Muhammad different to Christ? Well, he isn't. How is Jehovah different to Yahweh? Well, he isn't. How is all of these characters? How are they different from one another? They're not. They are all connected, and Islam is connected to Druidism, to Christianity, to Judaism. It's all connected by this thread of knowledge, and they all represent the same esoteric meaning. And when you're in the thick of it and you're standing there and you're pointing these things out, I think people get more from it than not being there.
Oh,
really.
And you can actually see it and get your photo taken and everything. Yeah, I agree with you. It's brilliant.
Of course, and as soon as you walk into a church, you are walking through the 7 chakras as you walk up the aisle, which is really marked out within each of the churches. And so is sacred geometry, so is the vibration of sanctity. All of these different things that are able to be pointed out, and it's an exciting thing, really. I do enjoy doing those things.
It is fascinating. So, all in all, all these ancient things, are you saying that the ancient astronaut theory is probably the true theory? With all the monoliths and the pyramids and everything? Sometimes I will sit there in a quiet moment and I'll have ideas or thoughts come into my head. Some of these thoughts will keep me awake at night because it's like a motorway. There's things coming through. If for argument's sake, if time is atomic and the atom was created at the Big Bang, then before the Big Bang there was no atoms, there was only infinity. And these are the kind of things that I will ponder over for hours before going to sleep. And when I do go to sleep, it's not unusual to get mathematical sequences come into my mind, which I then have to spend the next day working out what it actually means, what the message means. And there's been quite a few of them. So for me, because our DNA is been encoded elsewhere, because of panspermia, which is basically the seed of everything, where things have gravitated towards certain star systems, where the human physical body is from Orion, which is why Orion is so special. I mean, when you look at Osiris comes from 2 Egyptian words, Os, O-S, and Iri, that is many eyes. And when you look at the belt of Orion, you will see the 3 crosses of Calgary, which are the 2 physical eyes and the 3rd eye in the centre. So many eyes, Osiris, it was obviously associated with Orion. My theory is that humans are the aliens on this planet, and a lot of the monoliths that the mainstream tell you are 3 and 4 and 5,000 years old, we should be looking in the region of 500,000 years at least.
The Great Pyramid was definitely there at the last ice age, because that is what is known as a 19.5 degree effect. Now, all of the super pyramids across the Earth are situated between 19 and 20 degrees across the Earth. They are at 19.5 degrees. Now, the whole of the Sidonian city is mapped out to 19.5 degrees. The whole of the anomalies of nature on the spinning balls of space form at 19.5 degrees north or south latitude. When you see a tornado, for example, it is at 19.5 degrees. Now, the last ice age, the Polaris, the North Pole, was over certain aspects of Canada. Now, at that time, 19.5 degrees went straight through the Great Pyramid. So the Great Pyramid was there at the last ice age, at least. Oh. So my theory is that we came here, the monuments were already here, and there were certain individuals who were taught the secrets. There's no documentation anywhere that the Egyptians built the pyramids. Now, the Egyptians documented everything they did, but they didn't document building the pyramids because they didn't build them. They were taught how to use them. And they even say in their own recordings, and they even show you pictures of Orion aliens in their tapestries and their hieroglyphs. They said that a strange race gave them secret numbers, secret sequences, secret information. They were taught how to use, in effect, this gigantic portal network energetic system, which are like a national grid, where the epicenter of that national grid was the Great Pyramid, which really people now judge time by the Greenwich Mean Time through London. The original Greenwich the original Greenwich was the Great Pyramid. So the epicenter of the ancient world is the Great Pyramid of Egypt.
That's absolutely fascinating. Now, there was a question. I actually had a question from somebody. I'm just about to read it out now. It's to do with, it says, not sure about ancient, but I'd be interested if there's been a code found within crop circles or the Nazca lines of carvings. We were talking about Nazca earlier. And I did promise I'd ask that question. It's by Gaz Gray.
In simple terms, yes. Yes to both. When you look at crop circles, they are not circle, they are oval. And the reason they are oval is because the geometric shape of fort is oval. Now, the reason I say that is when you get a group of people together and they have a focused consciousness to the level of what is known as a type 1 civilization, which is a group consciousness, they are able to create, even though a lot of the time it's unknowing, they are able to create self-radiant balls of light known as vacuum domains. Now, these are the plasma balls of light that are seen and have been seen creating crop circles. These plasma balls of light have had recorded intelligent conversation between each other. So what I'm getting at is if the human mind, as a focused consciousness, can create through its mind, through its thought process, a self-radiant ball of light, then whose thought process is creating these magnificent circles, these ovals of geometric intricacy. Now, I know people will say that they know people who've created these. You know, many of the people who've created them have said that they were guided to create them. Inside crop circles, or crop ovals, as they should be really called, there is what is known as diatonic ratios. Diatonic ratios are sound signals that are not part of the natural world, with the exception of the call of the whale. That is a diatonic ratio. So it's not huge part of the natural world. Now, these diatonic ratios contain a language hidden and conveyed within the sound waves of these diatonic ratios. Now, to just prove that that's possible, when you look at the famous composers like Bach and Mozart, they used to encode messages to their families within their symphonies.
Oh, really?
And their families were able to extract the letters and the sentences from their symphonies to receive a coded message. This is what the Nazca lines are. This is what the crop circles are. They are encrypted sound through geometric shapes, and each geometric shape contain a different vibration, a different message. So yes, there is a code, there is a sacred geometric code, there is a sonic language going on to be translated. Now, the wise people of the likes of Stonehenge were able to interpret these codes, and the reason that spirals feature so prominently in the ancient world is spirals slow down the message in order to be deciphered. So in essence, there is a code within these magnificent ovals, these geometric shapes. And that really, in a nutshell, is a very short, superficial answer.
Yeah, I think he was trying to get at, have you actually decoded any of them yourself? That's kind of what I think he means.
Right. Now, I do have these sounds, these sonic messages. At some point, I do know I will listen to them, and I do know that I will get something from them. As yet, I've only listened to them without that silent moment of just letting it be interpreted. So me personally, no. However, I have heard them, and they are there, and I will at some point. I'm fairly confident at some point that I will sit down and I will get some kind of information from them.
Yeah, sure. I mean, some of them are tremendously complicated, aren't they? These crop circles, or designs, I should say, like formations. And I still find it impossible, hard to imagine that someone's doing that in the dead of night with no lights, and they do it overnight, and there they are in the morning. Well,
I've been there in the dead of night, and I've walked through them in the dead of night, and you literally cannot see 2 inches in front of you. Now, bearing in mind, it's not exactly level ground. It is treacherous ground. Sometimes you're going up hills. It's pitch black. You can't see anything. I've also seen live recordings of a magnificent flash of light, and within 7 seconds, a formation has appeared. This to me is the power of thought, is the manifestation of thought. Now, thought is an energy, and an energy becomes a manifestation into the physical realm. And when you look at Egypt and you look at Teote is really telling us of thought, and how thought is really conveyed through the electromagnetism of the body, the torus anatomy, which is the apple of Eden. And when you look at the famous Apple Corporation logo with a bite, that really is symbolic of a disruption of the electromagnetic torus anatomy, which is the apple of Eden. And of course, when you get an apple, when you get a physical apple, and I guarantee that some of the listeners will do this, if you get an apple and you slice it widthways, it reveals the geometric shape of the pentagram. The pentagram is the Star of Bethlehem. The pentagram is a symbol of the mystery schools. It is the number 5. Now, the number 5, phi, which is the geometric creation of the human body. Phi gives us philosophy, and that is the study of wisdom. Now, phi, the number 5, is the pivot point. It is the balance point between 0 and 10. 10 is base 10 mathematics, which again is torus anatomy, which is the creation of the human body. We are base 10 mathematics. So we have all of these different things going on, but it all leads to the same thing, which is the supernatural ability of humanity.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Now, I've got another question. Do you feel you get help from the other side? I'm talking about, because you have had paranormal experiences of your own. Do you feel you might get help from the other side, from your guides, etc.?
I do, and I've been told that I do. I've certainly been told in channeled messages. I've been told that from the very point that I came here, I was chosen to do this. I've been told that the reason I've had so many experiences is because I need to experience it, and I needed to live it and come through it in order to teach others and tell others. I've been told that, at times you wonder how you get the information you do. Well, we channel it to you. So that there's all of these indications, and I know for a fact when you start having lots and lots of synchronicities, and you start to feel things being implanted into your head that you know have come from elsewhere. When you basically tap into the quantum data, the quantum field around you, when you are invited to do a UFO conference 18 months ago in Blackpool, the PAUK conference, and from the very offset of being invited, you can feel an outside presence steering your slideshow, giving you images about how it should appear and what sequence and what should be said, and having words come into my head like ambassador, to then have a channeled message a year later saying that you are an ambassador. Now, this was a private thought. Now, there's something telling me of a private thought using the exact same language that I used. When you start having all these synchronicities and you start to have, you know, before you go on holiday to Egypt in 2010, you have a psychic medium just contact you out of the blue for no reason, who you don't know, telling you that you will uncover an ancient secret knowledge that will be added to your toolbox, telling you that you need to get as close to the right-hand side of the Sphinx as you possibly can. Now, for anybody who's been to Egypt, when you approach the Sphinx, there is really very narrow concrete tunnels, and it's really like a cattle market. And when you get when you can barely move, and when we got to the top of this ramp, this cattle grid, this ramp, and you look to the right, you see the right-hand side of the Sphinx. Now, just as the wife and I got there, a gap opened up big enough for two people, and this is the closest we could get to the right-hand side of the Sphinx.
Right.
all of these, all of these synchronicities, people contacting you out of the blue and saying this, and it did take 7 years, however, to actually come into fruition. I expected it to be evident there and then, but it wasn't. 7 years later, then it came through, and then it came through thick and fast. But it took 7 years for that message to actually come into manifestation. So when you have all of these different component parts and things that outside of you that are quoting thoughts that you've had privately inside your head, using the exact same words, the same language, people contacting you out of the blue and telling you these things, many other things as well, then you start to paint a picture that maybe this is planned. So yes, there is guidance there, there is information there, there are theories that come through as an idea. One of those, again, has no scientific proof, but another one of those theories is that the stars that we see at night are actually suns for orbiting planets. Just like the planets orbit our sun. We can't see them because we can only see things that are reflected light. Now, because they are so far away from our physical vision, we can't see the planets that are orbiting these stars, but I think that these stars are suns for orbiting planets. Oh, yeah. That being the case, we have lots of life right on our doorstep.
Absolutely. I mean, there's probably somebody sitting on one of the stars out there looking back at our star with our little, and they can't see our little planet either.
Well, we can't even see planets of our own solar system, and we're in that solar system. So yes, there's lots of things going on. I've been told about how starships, UFOs, whatever you wish to call them, are created from the metals of the atmosphere of stars. How within three-dimensional galaxies there are what they call tunnels, corridors. So they can give the impression that they're blinking in and out, but what they're really doing is going into these tunnels, which are outside of time and space, and then they're able to reappear at any place they choose within our reality. And all of these mechanisms, and I've personally seen spaceships coming out of wormholes in the sky. I've physically seen them open up in the sky and things coming out of them. So this is happening. This is happening every night in our skies, every day in our skies. And when people sit back and start to look and start to listen and start to open their mind, then a complete new reality will open up for them.
Do you feel you might have been even contacted by ETs?
I've been given channeled messages from them. I've certainly stood next to them. Some of the channeled messages that I've had have been really quite blunt, and one that always springs to mind, which is one that I always use as an example, is we're not here to rescue you, we're here to help you to rescue yourself. Mm. And that is really quite blunt. We're not going to do it for you. But their presence here activates what is known scientifically as a spontaneous self-organisation. Now, what that means is when two frequencies meet, whether that be a lower and a higher frequency, initially they will continue to vibrate at their original frequency. But at some point in that transaction, the lower frequency will raise itself to match the higher frequency, and then it will basically oscillate at that higher frequency in unison with the original higher frequency. That is spontaneous self-organisation. The presence of higher vibrations around this planet and on this planet will do that to the vibration of humanity. Now, that is really an interaction, an invisible interaction that is going on. We will automatically rise to a higher vibration. And that is really a sort of an invisible interaction that is one of many things that are going on at the moment.
Sure. I mean, I'd like to take you back to, we're going to go right back to when you were in the police force. Do you feel that rescuing situation that you mentioned earlier, actually, because you got very disillusioned with the police force, didn't you, apparently? And, yeah, sorry.
No, yeah, absolutely. Certainly probably about 12 to 14 months before I actually left. I mean, the police force for me was my first marriage. It really was. I was always there. I was dedicated. It was the in-joke that if you slice open one of my veins, then the police would come out of it. And because I was literally married to my career. And in the end, it was 17 years on the front line, seeing humanity really at every conceivable worstity of humanity I've seen. Every situation you can imagine in your wildest nightmares I have seen. And I've been there and I've experienced. Sometimes I've been the first person there and I had to deal with it and pick the pieces up. Now, this was my life. Now, when you get married, there's not an intention when you get married to divorce. But certainly approaching 2009, which was the year of my event, which really involved, conscious time travel and remote viewing consciousness entanglement into the Victorian England times. But 12 to 15 months leading up to that, I was becoming very, very disillusioned with the things that I was seeing. I've since been told that the reason that I had to leave is that my energies could no longer tolerate and were no longer compatible with that situation. So basically I had to leave. But I was very disillusioned. I was seeing the public being lied to, the public being fooled by manipulated figures. I was seeing, crime figures. They had what was known as KPIs, key performance indicators. And an example of that was vehicle crime, which was classed as theft of, when someone steals your car, or theft from, when someone smashes your window, steals your stereo, sat-nav, whatever. Those were KPIs, and they were, police forces are measured upon KPIs. So what they were doing is they were reclassifying those crimes so that they wouldn't appear on the KPIs. So basically it was fraudulent figures. Yeah. And the Home Office are giving these fraudulent figures and saying that this is happening and this crime is down. No, it isn't. It's just been renamed. It's still rising. And that to me was sort of blatant corruption. And it was this kind of thing really that was impacting me, and it was turning me into someone that I'm not. I was short-tempered. I was angry. I was negative. I was really at a low ebb. So I had to leave. Now, bear in mind that coincidentally or not, at the same time, I was having all of these daily paranormal things going on, where a day couldn't go by or a night couldn't go by where I was seeing something, experiencing something. Now, that could have been in broad daylight when there was massive cigar-shaped UFOs above me, going to Jersey on a weekend break and having some kind of craft coming over the beach over my head, seeing these dimensional portals opening, going into a local park, pitch black, couldn't see anything, in the middle of dense forestry, and then all of a sudden this bright white light appearing in the trees, so bright you can actually look into it in front of me, and seeing orbs going in to this bright light. And all of these things were happening on a daily basis. So this, coupled with the disillusion, I just walked to the post office, I resigned, I handed in my resignation. There was no emotion, there was no connection, there was no ties. It was put a stamp on this and send it. And that was the end of my career. I never went back. Now, and really, in 8 years' time, I would have been retired. I would have been sitting up, on a beach in Marbella or wherever. I'd have been retired. Something has happened to turn my life around to such an extent. My life is completely different. And it's interesting to say the least. It's very, very interesting, but it can be challenging.
Oh, yeah.
But it's happened. It's happened for a reason. And I just have to trust, sometimes the only thing you can do in this reality is fill yourself through.
Yeah.
Just fill your way and just go with it.
Well, that's why I wanted to approach it, because for anyone out there new to you and might not have known what you're all about, that's why I wanted to take it back and give it a little bit more of an introduction as to who you were. Because, that's not a small undertaking to quit a job like that, because, I don't know if you get a pension or something from them, or if you just threw that away, did you? It's a personal question. If you don't want to answer it, don't answer it.
Well, no, yeah, well, of course you do, and there's various options. You can freeze it, you can do whatever, there's various things that you can do with that pension. But this was happening at the time where we was having this real global recession, and there was lots of people losing their jobs. Now, I walked out of mine. It was a secure job. I would have been there for the rest of my working life. Secure job. Every month, there's guaranteed money in there. It was a secure job, and I walked out of it. What series of events causes someone to walk out of their job, a secure job, sure, in the middle of a global recession with nothing to go into?
And obviously, you had may well have had the chance of commissions as well.
Well, there's many departments within the force that wished me to join them. I could have gone up the ranks. I could have joined different departments. I could have gone wherever I wanted to go. And, I had commendations for bravery. My bedroom wall at my mum's house, the wall is decorated with awards, and I was an expert eyewitness in any court in the United Kingdom. So, it gave me the skills to investigate. It gave me the skills to succinctly, to the point, document and write and gather evidence, piece that evidence together, investigate what that evidence is telling me. It gave me all these skills. And the reason that my writing style is to the point is because I'm used to writing for court.
Yeah. And you can present your story very well to the public, as we can hear.
Well, when you go to court, they are interested in a few things. Where were you? What did you hear? What did you see? Was it light? Was it dark? What was obstructing your view? That's what they're interested in. They're not interested in, I woke up this morning, I had cornflakes, I put a tie on, it was black. I then went. They're not interested in that. My writing style is, this is what I saw, this is what I pieced together, this is the evidence for it. And because of my background of law enforcement and evidence gathering, and then having to present that evidence to legal minds, to judges and juries and barristers and in a sort of short evidential way, and that really has sort of come with me into my current sort of writing style.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, obviously, when this goes out, all your as much information as I can put on the Paranormal Dimensions page will go on there, with, putting into your books and everything else. I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to say. I mean, I don't know what other questions to ask you, to be quite perfectly honest. You've told us so much in such a short time, and it's very difficult for me to come up with anything more new to ask you.
Well, that's a nice compliment, thank you. I mean, again, there's probably just in conclusion, it might just be worth saying to people that they are really supernatural beings. Now, 90% of the cells of their body are not them. The atoms of their body are 99.99999% empty space. None of the atoms that they currently have are not the ones that they were born with. Every single one of their cells is governed by universal law. Their DNA was programmed beyond Earth. Their body is from Orion. Their junk DNA regulates gene expression. RNA instructs DNA, which then carries that message through the double helix system of their genetics. It is a 3 billion letter code, as we've already said, and that code is interpreted and translated by a spherical bacteria called ribosomes. Our body comprises of minute portions of matter that are, some of them are known as virtual particles. Those virtual particles have to pay back the energy that they are borrowed by disappearing. It is universal law. That is physical death. Now, the first law of thermodynamics tells you that energy cannot die, but it can be reused, it can be changed, but it must live on in some kind of form. The standard model of physics, the law of physics, is constantly changing. The understanding of the laws of physics are changing. And an example of that is electrons have recently been observed in a lab changing into muons. Now, muons are unstable subatomic particles that have a mass 200 times greater than the electron. So the standard model of physics is wrong. It has to change. Hydrogen is a single proton and an orbiting electron. Now, this was used to fuel the first stars, the nuclear fusion of the first stars. If this proton and neutron mass was just a little bigger, there would be no fusion and the universe would have been stuck at hydrogen, the hydrogen stage. If that mass was slightly smaller, hydrogen would have fused into helium, and that would have left no power to fuel stars like the sun. There would have been no life on Earth. This proton, if protons and neutrons didn't have these precise masses, we would not exist. It is the Higgs boson that makes the universe stable. If this mass-giving particle was much lighter, then the cosmos would collapse on itself. So really, we are a result of perfect balance, and it is this balance of self that leads to the Enlightenment. Now, since we started this interview, there have been hundreds of millions of ghostly neutrino shape-shifting particles that have passed each and every one of us. There have been countless massive particles that have lived a brief existence and have then disappeared, and they've done that to stop your body flying apart at the speed of light. We are being held together. Now, the speed of light for me is a speed limit, because the human body cannot travel faster than the speed of light, simply because leptons and quarks, which bind together into structured matter, would not bind together at the speed of light. We are supernatural beings, and the universe is full of conscious life that has gravitated towards star systems. That is the magnitude of each and every one of us. That is how perfect we are. That is the true essence of our self. Why are we arguing about whose God is the most peaceful? Why are we arguing about petty little things like, is the earth flat or is it round? Why are we arguing about these things when we realise our magnificence? And that is really how I would sort of like to end it, to just tell people how special they are.
Yeah, I think that's magnificently put, Michael. I just, as you say, you always blow me away every time I hear you, or and I've been lucky enough to meet you now, and I really hope we'll get together again. Definitely will. And I hope maybe you'll come back in maybe another few months or a year or something, and tell us more about your next book, because you've got one on the way. Do you know what the title of that is yet?
I don't. It's certainly going to. It's probably going to be something like the consciousness of the mind, the mind matrix, or something like that. It'll be something along those lines. It'll be a science book that complements, again, the secret world. And when you start looking into the subatomic world, it is really the parallel existence. You know, I even put a post on the other day explaining how even in the quantum world, even the likes of a banana is interesting.
Oh yes, I saw
because,
that one, yeah.
You know, because 15 times every second, matter creates this spark of light that is called something else. Now that something else is antimatter. It is a parallel existence. It is a parallel universe, a parallel existence of antimatter. So the quantum world is the shadow world. It is the immortal world. It is important. It is the black stuff of space, really, the cosmic glue. So it will go into a lot of that kind of stuff. But again, it will always, my stuff will always maintain the same kind of theme, which is the secrets that are being kept from us. But there's lots and lots of things that are being introduced to move that even more forward.
And I think you've obviously been chosen to put this over to everyone, because you do explain it in such a way that it's understood. You might need to listen to it a couple of times even and think about it a bit more and read your books, but a lot of it does actually make an awful lot of sense. You know, it's... It can. I mean, sometimes it can come to me with such complexity that it takes me a couple of days to put it into a format where I can understand it and I can relate to other people. So it doesn't always. Sometimes it comes in a complex way that has to be unravelled. Yeah. I mean, a lot of it is very surprising about, you know, the Beatles and the eye, and everything else like that, the all-seeing eye, and Apple and everything else. When you start thinking about all these, it's actually pretty scary.
Well, the thing is, again, when I was saying about the Great Pyramid being a giant replica of the human mind, you know, the eye of Horus is the pineal gland. Below the pineal gland, you have the medulla oblongata, which is basically the brainstem. Now, that gives the appearance of a falcon. Now, that is the falcon-headed god, Horus. And when you start looking at these kind of things, it's really the anatomy of the brain. When you see Teote, he's often depicted with a baboon, which may seem strange. But when you open out the brain, you look at the olfactory tract, which is basically the central nervous system. The olfactory tract, when opened out, looks like a baboon. So again, that they are telling us of the anatomy of the brain through pictorial messages.
That knowledge was there, obviously.
They had an advanced knowledge. When I met Anthony Peake at a talk we did in Birmingham last year, I was saying to him, you know, what we deem as modern science is really an ancient knowledge, because they knew this thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, and it's now just being rediscovered as a new invention, but it's not a new invention. It's something they knew a long time ago.
And as I mentioned earlier, Anthony Peake is on the next show, so no doubt this will all be spoken about again. Obviously you'll get mentioned again, I should think.
Well, he's a very interesting person, yeah. And I've said to him that I hold him in high esteem, so he'll be a good guest.
As such as yourself, I mean, you've been fantastic, Michael. Thank you so much for finding the time again to come on. And I wish you luck on your journeys and safe travels, and enjoy your trip to San Francisco.
I certainly will. Certainly will. I don't know what to expect, but it's just one of those.
It's a great town. If you've never been there before, get a car out and have a drive around those streets. It's quite an experience.
I can imagine. Probably it looks like Derby with the hills up and down.
and walking up and down was quite tiring. I saw you.
Well, it depends which way you're going.
Well, it's all right. Yeah, you've got to go one way or the other. If you're coming out of your hotel or whatever, you've got to go down or up, and you're it's like mountain climbing if you've done much of that.
Great. I think I'll stay in the hotel in that case.
Anyway, Marcus, thank you so much for coming on, and as I say, I hope you'll come back again. I'll probably see you. I will be seeing you on one of your cathedral tours, if not more than one. But as I say, take care of yourself, and thank you again for coming on, and wish you luck.
Well, thank you very much again, and just say the word and I'll be back anytime. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Michael. And, you've been listening to the Paranormal UK Radio Network. This is Paranormal Dimensions. I'm David Young. You've just been listening to Michael Feeley, and thank you very much, and thanks again, Michael. Bye.
Thank you, and good evening. You take care. Bye-bye.
It hasn't changed in millions of years. But here we have a clue to an answer.
Paranormal Dimensions is a regular feature on Mondays on the Paranormal UK Radio Network.